This is Desi Arnaz Jr. Let me introduce you to Vernon Howard. As you listen to his teachings, you may feel that they are truly different, that they have a new and refreshing attraction. That feeling is the dawn of a higher life for you. So listen as if these ideas can lead you all the way up to the mountain top, for they can. Here is Vernon Howard.
Let me tell you, you are not going to change your level of being, which is the same as your level of authentic happiness, until you make a deliberate effort to jolt yourself. I've given you 100 exercises to start this small jolting. You're catching yourself about to go into a daydream. And if you're alert and watchful, you're just around the house or walking down the street, and you can see yourself slipping into it. The minute you feel the temptation of it, and that's what temptation is. Temptation is the initial appearance of a call to leave home, your right home. And at the moment of temptation, you can still say no to it if you're conscious and if you're awake. But I'm talking to a room full of people who have a long ways to go before you can even notice yourself getting ready to slip over into wilderness thinking, into vagabond thoughts, into where you could just sit back lazily, no matter your hands are washing the dishes or mowing the lawn or whatever. And your mind is in a beautiful castle in Spain. This is division. You want the castle in Spain, and yet you say you want to be free of suffering. Try to have one without the other. If you want the castle in Spain, you're going to cry because you know it isn't real. But you know that isn't real, but you don't know what is real yet. To know what is real, the whole castle, all the dreams about it, the beautiful gentleman that you're going to rescue, or ladies that knight and the white horse, you're going to have to give up the dream of them coming along and rescuing you. Now, do you have the honesty to begin bringing it out to yourself, not to me or anyone else in this group, but to yourself? This is the important place where you have to begin to see what you're like inwardly. And let me tell you why that's very difficult. You don't want to admit that you're unhappy, that you hate a lot of people that you're supposed to love. You can't admit this because you think that is being bad. See, you have all this violence in you, all this simmering and churning in which you feel repressed and you feel threatened and you feel cheated. And you feel rightly, by the way, that you're playing a role, which you are. You're marvelous actors and actresses. But you don't want to see all the suppressed rage you have in you because you feel that you would be condemned by both yourself and other people. Repeat. You don't want to even look and glance and see how bad off you are, which you are. You're a terrible mess, every one of you. You don't want to see how you fawn and phony smiles and all that, because you're afraid that if you see it too clearly, you'll have to call yourself bad. And you don't want to be bad because you were told, by people who were bad, by the way, that you should be good. And so you've taken being good as being a phony smiler, a phony generous person, a person who's supposed to be patient, a person who is the silent type, not the blabbermouth type. We tell you in this room, the one chance you have to go through the rest of your life here on earth, going uphill, that is, receiving the light, that is, understanding yourself, that is, becoming sane, your one chance is to begin to see all these hostilities that you have in you, all these little petty desires, and then we will tell you what next to do when you have done that much. You can't absorb it now. This is overwhelming. Even the smallest step that is given you in this class is a giant stride that it takes weeks and months and even years to begin to understand. because you don't quite get it. And you will always have an answer to anything that I tell you. Already, all of you here have given 10, 20, 50 answers already, unknowns to yourself, to what I have said already. Because it's the only thing you can do, the way your mind presently operates. Because you feel threatened, whether you're new or old here, you feel threatened by what I said. You feel as if, well, look, you're saying, now this is not what I've been taught before. Aren't you delighted? No, you're not delighted at all. The true being strange is always rejected, always pushed away as a threat. Not knowing your psychic system, as you're seated here right now as I'm talking to you, you don't know how you're pushing away what I'm telling you now because you feel that you are in danger. You would be endangered, that is, if these principles, these truths, these facts that are given to you, you would feel that you'd be in danger if they came and took over your life. Now let's figure that one out. You said, unconsciously, you don't know that you said this, I do. If I proceed along the lines the man said, to see these things inside myself, if I see that I am a horrible creature, won't that be bad to call myself a horrible creature? All this hatred for certain people, for example, and all this pretense. If I see this and see what I'm actually like, won't that be a dangerous state to be in? I might do something bad. How can I get anything through your heads? You are bad because, as the young man brought out in a question, because you're undeveloped. Do you have the nerve to sit there in that chair and tell me that you're good? That you're decent? You'd like to kid yourself into thinking so, wouldn't you? And you've got all the roles to play with all the words. The word love, for example, you don't know what love is. You never have known. And if you don't wake up, you never will know. All the words kindness, cooperation, all the words being a good citizen, being a good wife, a good husband, being a good parent. You have been very, very badly damaged by the world that you came into. Everyone you've met told you that the way the world is the way you have to inherit it. You have to inherit the world as it is, with the quarreling that you saw in your home when you were a child, the pettiness that you saw out in the world, men screaming over money and women screaming over this or that. I want to tell you that, effective as of right now, you don't have to take it for granted that the way you are now, which is known in this room, that the way you are now has to continue forever and forever and ever. Wherever you go to another organization, a group, whether it's psychological or religious or social, they're going to tell you that the way you are now is the way you must remain. And I am telling you that that is an outrageous lie. And I also know that most people prefer to believe in lies so they can continue to live in their delusions and daydreams of greatness. They prefer to live in lies and falsehoods and to live in dreadful, horrible unnaturalness, which we'll now discuss. Think of the word natural and think of the word unnatural. You don't know what it means to be natural, so I'll have to tell you what it is, and then someday you may grow into it. To be natural means that you use the world that you live in, that you use everything correctly. because your own naturalness and the naturalness you find out in the world out there and in other people, for example, to some degree, there's no division between your naturalness and what's out there, what little you can find out there. There's no contradiction because you being natural, you are now one with the naturalness of the whole universe. Therefore, there's no conflict in you at all. Even when you encounter, as you do many times each day, when you encounter unnaturalness, your own wholeness, your own psychic maturity, in short, your own naturalness knows how to handle it. And how it handles it, it's first of all inwardly. For example, you meet an angry person, a threatening person. But if you were natural inside, then your naturalness has nothing in common with their anger, right? So is there anything for you to do? Why are you supposed to handle the anger? There's nothing for you to do. If you were to handle the anger from yourself in the wrong way, you would be joining it, wouldn't you? If you argued back, if you fought back with the person. So when a natural mind that has no hostility in itself looks out and sees the horror of the world, it just sees it. It just sees it without becoming a part of it, without even condemning it. That is, condemning it from the sense of saying, I am much better than that. Because there's no egotistical self to compare and come out favorably when comparing to an unnatural world. So naturalness is a very, let's do it now, it's a very quiet, slow state. It's not rushing anywhere. It is not trying to accomplish a thing. Would you want the whole world if you own the whole world? How could you want the whole world if it's already yours? So naturalness, which indeed owns the whole universe, because it is part of the naturalness out there, as I just said. Its naturalness and that naturalness out there are one thing. Therefore, no division, nothing to fight, nothing to want, except what is natural, which is because it is natural itself. Can't you catch yourself during your day being very, very strained and being very, very unnatural? And haven't you ever asked yourself, I wonder if it's possible to be in relationship with another person or with a group of people or with relatives. I wonder if it's possible to be in relationship with another person without there being any strain in it at all as far as I'm concerned. I can't change that other person. If he or she is unnatural and nervous or demanding, I can't change that. I can't save that world out there. I have to save this world in here. You will find yourself at the very start making some interesting discoveries about the whole situation, and especially to yourself. You're seated having coffee with someone, maybe a stranger or a semi-stranger, or someone that perhaps there's some kind of an emotional turmoil between you. And if you begin to watch yourself in action, you'll notice how your physical body does unnatural things. You stir the coffee with your spoon unnecessarily brisk, for example. Or you look up at the ceiling to pretend that you're thinking about something and you're not at all. It's just that you don't want the other person to see what's really in your face, that anger, and so you hide it behind that. You say, well, I guess so. I guess it'd be all right if we did that. You could have seen yourself saying that and looking up toward the ceiling as a cover-up for what you're really feeling. But you don't dare do that. You're afraid to be exposed, for example, in front of the other person and exposed in front of yourself. You'll notice all sorts of unnatural things where you maybe go in and apply for work, or you're talking with a person of the opposite sex, and maybe the person is attractive to you, and you watch yourself doing and saying certain things, all because you don't know how to act natural. All because all these imposters in the form of ideas and feelings and habits and impressions, All these impostors have leaped up to tell you how you should behave in order to gain an advantage from the situation. I will tell you that you don't need to gain an advantage in the situation with any human being or any situation on earth. You already have the whole world. What are you looking for? Poor, petty little sparrows flitting around looking for crumbs when you could have everything. Maybe you've never put yourself in a position where you've heard these facts before. But you are here tonight. And after tonight, there's no excuse for you going back and saying, the world has cheated me. There's no excuse for you going back to your home and saying, I can't make it. Because when you do that, there's really a confession. It's a confession that you don't want to fight for yourself. How pitiful. Let me tell you, we are here to fight for ourselves in the right way, which means we're not fighting against anything. We're not fighting for anything except our own sanity. We're fighting in a way which is utterly unique. A way that'll bring us through many new storms. You know, if you look out at the physical weather, there's snowstorms, is there not? And there's windstorms, and there's the storm of the ocean lashing the beach. All varieties of storms. One of the pleasures of walking the inner path is the different variety of storms. And someday you'll say, oh, isn't that strange? I've been through this storm of a broken relationship with a woman or a man. I've been through that storm. I've been through the storm of being fired after 20 years working at a certain factory. I've been through the storm of illness. You'll find yourself looking at all these new storms with curiosity, with interest, rather than with fear, if you get this far. Because you'll have said, you know, I entered that other storm 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and I applied these truths, these principles, and they worked for me in a way in which nothing ever did before. All the false ideas of society, they didn't work. But I met this situation with as small amount of insight as I could, and that insight grew and grew and grew, and I passed through that particular storm. I hope all of you understand that unless you're in a storm at all times and know you are not changing your nature at all. All of society lives by lullabies. Pretty music, people want to regress to childhood when you were younger. You want people to sing lying songs to you. I'm not going to accept that for anyone in this class who says they want to go forward. And I don't accept it for myself either. You should not only want to be in a storm, but you should search them out with eagerness. You should say, what part of me, up here in my mind, or maybe in my feelings somewhere, where am I refusing the battle with the storm by staying in a dream, by putting on a big phony front? Don't waste your time in this room. Oh, that didn't mean anything to you. Of course it doesn't. You'll come up on Sunday and you'll do the same thing. You'll do it for a long, long time. And finally it will begin to dawn on you that when I said don't stand up and put on an act, that you put on an act 1 second after I said don't put on an act. It is only by entering the storm and passing beyond it that you authentically get rid of everything that has been pushing you down and tormenting you. And then you can walk into this room, or you can walk home, you can walk into a situation at work, and listen to this. Whereas before you were tense and nervous, wondering what was going to happen to you, you know in advance always what's going to happen to you in any so-called crisis, because as far as you're concerned, it's no crisis at all. A crisis exists only to people who are asleep, dreaming they are awake. So anything that comes along, you know where you are, spiritually speaking. You know that, listen to this, you know that your old acquired nature, your false nature, is not going to enter that situation. It entered it 10,000 times and was defeated every time, and you went away either crying or falsely joyous because you won an ego victory. There can be no crisis at all for the man or for the woman who knows who he really is. All crises are abolished because there's no crisis for truth, the truth that's living in you. Now I should tell you, especially for some of you who haven't heard this sort of thing before, in your present state, quite unknown to you, fights, arguments, crises, quarrels of every description with other people or with yourself, they are your present food. This is what you live on. This is what you thrive on. This is what your old wrong nature lives on. And you have to keep feeding it. That is, it lives on agitation. Take the word agitation. Doesn't that describe your day-to-day, your last night, your nightmares, or your bad dreams, or whatever? There is something in our old dark nature that demands a crisis every minute. And your old nature will be very obliging. It will answer your prayer for a crisis. And if none happens to happen on the inside, you will have the full cooperation of everyone outside of you who will supply the crisis to you so that they can get the same thing back to themselves, because they are also eternally hungry for something to fight about. And this is what we call safety. We call it security when we're hiding out and refusing to face life. It is quite true that to call ourselves cowards, it's quite true and quite accurate description. To use terms, to put a label on our state, when we do, that is quite accurate to say that we're cowardly. Now I'll tell you why you're cowardly. You're cowardly because you don't know that you can learn how to be brave. You don't know that there's a bravery that has not been yours up till now, that's not a part of you now, a bravery that can enter you, that can take possession of you and be brave for you. Can you understand what I said? I know how hard it is for the intellect to grasp cosmic truths. I said that there is a power, a force, call it truth, call it reality, call it God, that can take over your life and live it for you so that indeed there's no more problems, nothing to fight about, a life to live, of course, things to do, of course, but nothing to tremble over. So naturalness means to use the world and everything in it, both the outer world and the inner world, in the right way. To use it in the right way instead of distorting everything. Naturalness never distorts truth, does it? Falsehood destroys truth. To live in right relationship was the same, which is the same thing as oneness, as wholeness. To live in right relationship with the whole universe. Start way up there with the universe, come on down to this world, come on down to the earth, come down to people, come on down to yourself, come on down to the inner world, come down to your mind. The whole business is flowing, living and glowing very nicely and very naturally. And this happens because you've worked hard. Now we'll illustrate the whole point. A wanderer was walking down a dusty road one day. It was a hot day. The sun was coming down fiercely. And as he was walking along the road, he was looking for a place to sit down and rest a little bit, but couldn't see anything that looked like shade, so he just had to keep walking for a long, long ways. Finally, off to the right, he saw a strange sight. It was strange because it seemed out of place. And what he saw was a very pretty cherry tree. Pretty pink blossoms on it. Full bloom. And underneath the cherry tree was a log, and on the log a man was seated. The man had a notebook and pencil in his hand. He was apparently writing down something. So the wanderer, of course, was quite attracted to the shade and a chance for a rest, so he walked on over, and two strangers looked at each other and greeted each other. And the wanderer asked, "May I sit down for a minute?" And the cherry tree man said, "Fine, yes, sit down." And the wanderer asked, "I'm very thirsty. It's been a long, hard hike ever since this morning. Is there water around here?" And the student, the learner, said, "Yes, there's a nice creek in back, a couple 100 yards in back. Walk over, nice, cool, pure water." So the wanderer wandered over and had a drink, came back, felt very refreshed. So the two men sat together on the log, and the learner kept making little notes in his notebook. And the wanderer, of course, was curious as what this was all about. So he probed a little bit. He said, "Excuse me, I guess you're a nature student." And the learner said, "Yes, I am, but not quite of trees or bushes and of streams, but I'm a student of human nature." And the wanderer's ears picked up a little bit of that, and he said, "Oh, that sounds interesting. Could you tell me more? I notice you're taking notes there. What's it all about?" And the learner said, "Just a minute, and you'll see for yourself what it's all about." So they sat and casually passed the time of day a little bit. A little bit later, right in front of them, on the dusty road, all of a sudden came along 40 or 50 people on foot, rushing hurriedly forward. And the wanderer looked at them, and he could see, it was very obvious that they were strained, they were nervous, their faces were contorted, they were anxious, and they were muttering to themselves, and some were yelling out words. So they went by where the two men were seated and disappeared down the road. And the wanderer did a double take. He said, "What was that all about?" And the learner said, "It's a pretty long, complicated story. I think I'll let you see a little bit more before I explain it to you." So a few minutes later, another group of people, same as before, nervous and strained, came hurrying down the road all together, poking at each other, fighting with each other as they went on down. Pretty soon they disappeared too, down the road. And the man with the notebook said, "A little more patience. You'll see what it's all about. I come here every day. I know what it's all about. So you'll see for yourself." Third group of people came along, rushing, hurrying, kicking up dust, screaming at each other, went on down, disappeared down the road. They sat there for a while longer. Pretty soon, the original group of people who come for the first time past them came back in the opposite direction. 40, 50 people coming back again. And this time they were singing happily. They were clapping each other on the back, and boys and girls were holding hands. Everything was just beautiful between them, so it appeared. Happy and joyous. They went on down the road and disappeared. Second group came back. They were laughing, chuckling at each other, having a good time. One disappeared down the road. Third group came on back. Big smiles on their faces. They appeared to be purposeful. Went on past the two men, disappeared down the road. And the learner said, "Now, be very careful. Watch very careful what's going to happen next. And you'll begin to understand a few things." So the wanderer watched expectantly, and down the road again came the first group that had passed them both ways, who were now going back in the same original direction they'd gone the first time. This time they were gloomy again. They were depressed. And they were snapping at each other. And they were obviously very miserable. And the wanderer this time thought, "What a strange situation. Here these people are going down one direction, sad, and then they come back and they're unhappy. Is this the way it always is? Is this the way it always is?" And this is what I'm studying. I'm studying very careful people's reactions, how they behave, what they're like. And the wanderer said, you'll excuse me, but I don't get it at all. Where are they going? What do they come back for? What will cause them to be happy? And the learner said, well, I suppose it is time I explained everything to you. Here's the whole situation. When the people came by us the first time, they were living in a town called Unnaturalville. They all lived in a place called Unnaturalville, which is a terrible place to live in. It's strained and nervous, and they're always at each other's throats. However, at the end of the road where you saw them go down to, there's a factory. And this factory is called the Falsehood Factory. So all day long, the people who live in Unnaturalville have to go down to the Falsehood Factory, and you can imagine what they get. They get packages of falsehoods. And this is why, when they come back, they all seem so happy. They've found the lies they need to live in Unnaturalville. They go down depressed, and they know they have to get some lies developed. They get nervous like a man wanting a drink. They go down, and they kick all these false products from the Falsehood Factory. And when they come back, they feel elated because their egotism has been temporarily affirmed, and they feel that they're happy without actually being it. But having deceived themselves, they appear to be very buoyant and joyous as they come back. This is their life. This is the whole way they spend their day and night, anxiously going down, getting lies out of the Falsehood Factory, making themselves feel good for a short period, going back to Unnaturalville and quarreling with each other and with themselves and having nightmares too. This is the way it is. And the wanderer said, well, that's very interesting. You know, I have the feeling that maybe I used to be a part of them. I know I'm not now because I came off the road from a different direction. I've just been wandering around for years, but I have the feeling I used to do that myself. But I don't understand that, so I won't go into it. So the wanderer said to the learner, but what about you? Obviously, you're not a part of this. And the learner said, no, I'm not. I used to be. For many, many years, I used to be part of it. Till I got tired of trudging the road and quarreling with people and quarreling with myself, and decided to get down to business with my life. And the wanderer said, it's very strange and it's very unusual. I don't understand how you made it, how you broke away from them. Surely all you have to do is go out and tell people, those people on the road, what you've told me, and they'll listen and change their ways. And the learner said, let's make an experiment. Here they come now. Go out there and tell them that they don't have to go to the Falsehood Factory anymore, that there's something else. Go ahead, try it. So the wanderer went out. Here the group of people came down, boisterous and crude. And the wanderer tried to talk to him. But he noticed, even when he started to talk, they couldn't even look at him long enough to listen. And he realized that they had no capacity to even turn and notice and hear what he was saying. They were so intent on making their way to the Falsehood Factory where they would be temporarily revived with lies. So he tried that with several groups. Same thing. He tried it when they came back, when they seemed to be happy, when they were smiling and exterior, jubilant. Same thing. They walked by. They didn't even know he was standing there talking to them. So the wanderer went back to the log and sat down. He said, I understand, it's quite clear to me, that those people who live in Unnaturalville can't even hear good news when you're trying to tell them about it. But I'm still curious, the wanderer said, where you are now. If you no longer go to the Falsehood Factory, you must have some other source that turned you into a student, turned you into a learner. Because I'm not. I've just been a wanderer. Even if I used to live in Naturalville, I've been a wanderer for all these years. But I'm sure not happy. I don't want to go back to Naturalville, but I don't want to be a wanderer all my life either. So what's the answer? If that's the right question, because I don't know whether there is an answer or not. Is there something higher than either trudging the road or sitting on a log under the cherry tree? And the learner said, indeed there is. And because you asked me that, I can tell you about it. I can tell you how to put an end to all your wandering for the rest of your life. As a matter of fact, to put an end to your wandering for eternity, so that you're living naturally in the world and in yourself, from yourself. A couple miles in back of where we're seated, the learner said, there's another kind of factory, entirely different. Few people ever go there, but everything any human being ever wants or needs is there for the taking. It's called a fact factory. A fact factory. Instead of falsehood, that's where you go to get the facts. The facts that will set us free of our neurosis, of our pretense, of our fear of being found out. Why don't you get found out? What is stopping you from going full speed ahead to get found out so that you can get healthy? So that you can get cured? What are you waiting for? You've wasted enough time already. Do you want to get up tomorrow morning in the same dreadful, heavy spirit that you got up this morning? And you want to go to bed, grateful only because you can escape this terrible world for a little bit? It's a terrible world out there because it's a terrible world in there. In there. So back to the point again. What are you waiting for? Why aren't you going where the two men will now go? Let's finish them off. Take them to the fact factory. So they walked together a couple miles back. And there it was. Factory. No workers there. The work was complete. Plenty for everyone. Millions of facts. So the two men walked in. There's all kind of facts. Facts about being natural. Facts about being unnatural. Facts about how you're going to have to go against the whole world. And how there's a power and a strength that will take you every step toward going against everything that you've held dear up till now that's costing you very dearly. This class is a fact factory. You can have as much as you really want. And let's put an underline under the word really. Now, I'll tell you something else. Look, with most of you here, there's not very much really in you. The falsehood factory has become such a habit with you. You don't even know you go there 20 times a day. You don't know how desperate you are to find falsehood that'll shore up your false position. You don't know how you protect yourself. You don't see how easily you're offended by people and by life. You don't see how you cry that life doesn't unfold the way you demand or wish. Now, even if there isn't much real strength in you, there's something you can do. And what you can do is to know thoroughly, without any doubt, with utter self-convincing, that you don't have any strength. You can even see how your nature right now is an enmity against the small little voice of right hope that you've heard here tonight. You can see how you want to lazily go back to the falsehood factory. This class is a call. Not many people heed the call. You go out into the street and tell these truths to people and they won't even hear you. They've got a quick answer no matter what you say. They've got a fast answer and they'll push you away. What has that other person got to do with you as an individual here on earth with work to do? What has anyone got to do with you finding yourself? Don't you dare put any person or any thought or any condition or any reward or any security before your opportunity to break out. But to break out, you have to know you're in the trap. We're here to help you see that you are indeed in the trap. When you're in a trap, it hurts. When you are in a trap, it hurts, doesn't it? You hurt it all day long, didn't you? We'll teach you how to pull that trap apart and get it off your leg, get it off your psychic system, so that you're free. You can walk anywhere you want. You can walk anywhere you want, and there are no dangers to you, because there is no danger inside of you. Now, let me tell you, truth is not in danger from 10 billion devils. Truth is not in danger from 10 billion phonies in politics or religion or society. Truth quietly looks out at this mad world, quietly looks out and knows that it is insane, and then it looks around to see if it can find one person who wants to come out of it and to be sane and to be different, to fulfill the real purpose of life, which is to be a different kind of a person now than you were in the past. And what this difference is will be revealed to you personally, whether anyone else knows it or not. You will know from yourself what it means to be free, because the explanation comes from way up here down to you down here, and you know where it's coming from. And you know that it's true, that it's right, and that it's the only treasure and the only reward worth having here on earth. Think about all this, ponder it, take it home with you. And if you have any receptivity at all, the truth that wants to teach you will begin to teach you, and will begin to make you natural. So natural that you won't have to think about whether you are or not. You'll have a natural confidence, a natural ease, regardless of what you called a strained situation. There is no strained situation. There is a strained person. When you are natural and unstrained, wherever you go, you are natural and you are free. Worth working for? The only thing in life worth working for. There was once a man who had a canoe, and he liked to go out on the river with his canoe. And one day he went out and he paddled around upstream and downstream and crossed over to a little island in the middle of the river, wandered around, looked at the birds and the bushes and studied the natural scenery of it. Got back in his canoe, went back to shore, found his lunch there and had lunch. Got back in the canoe again, paddled around the river. Spent all morning paddling around. And paddling can be hard work, especially when you're paddling upstream, right? So as he's paddling around, he suddenly felt a little tired, and he thought maybe a little nap would be the right thing to do just now. So he lay down in the canoe, down inside of it, where he couldn't see anything but the sky as he looked up. And he thought he'd just take a little short nap, just a short nap, 5 minutes or so, no danger there. It's a very slow moving river. And he could get up any time he wanted and direct it toward shore. As he laid down, his mind was taken over by a very beautiful dream. And in this dream, he was many things that he was not in real life. He was a very handsome, dashing, gallant man. And all the ladies chased him. And he was very wealthy, and he wore fine clothes and had a fine mansion. He was wealthy and popular, and he had many exciting activities. And he owned vast property all around his mansion. And this was his dream. And it was such a beautiful dream, he finally remained in this sleepy state and forgot where he actually was. And this went on for a long time. But after a while, after continuing in this dream in which he was the center of everyone's admiration, and he was joyous and happy every minute, after a while he became aware of something impinging upon his ear. And he didn't want to hear whatever it was. Whatever was coming into one of his ears as he was lying down, whatever it was, he didn't want to hear it because it was interfering with his dream. And not only was this dream of what he was, of the greatness that he had now, but even greater greatness in future years. He had a greater future to look forward to. He already had $1 million. Someday he'd have $5 million. So he didn't want anything. To interfere with what was going on in his mind and in his feeling. It's very soft and comfortable and beautiful. And he could just close his eyes and let the dream live his life out for him. But this voice kept pounding in his ear, and he resented it. But it got louder and louder. And he couldn't push it away. He wanted to go back to sleep, but the voice kept pounding in his ear. And he found that a great violent hatred for the voice swelled up inside of him. Because he couldn't dream as peacefully as he wanted to as long as the voice kept interrupting the dream. And so groggily, he tried to find the location of it, and he managed to put one hand on the edge of the canoe, and he got himself up a little bit, still 3/4 asleep. And he looked over and he saw a man on horseback riding along parallel with him with a canoe, and he sensed that the canoe was drifting downstream. And he sensed that the man on the horseback galloping along the shore was yelling at him and trying to tell him that the canoe was drifting downstream. And he knew what was down at the end of that stream. There was a great waterfall. And for a long time, with his hand on the edge, the rim of the canoe, his groggy mind couldn't get the clear picture. He hated that man who was yelling, "Wake up and see where you're going." He hated that man. Yet he vaguely understood what he was saying, and yet he loved his dream more. He resented, to put it mildly, that man who was yelling, "Wake up. Your canoe is drifting downstream toward the waterfall." He hated him. He wanted him to go away and let him sleep and let him dream. At that point, he has a choice. He has a dim awareness of what is going on that shore. And what is going on is someone is yelling out, "Sir, you're in danger. Pay attention to what I'm saying. Listen to me. Shake off your sleep. Shake off that dream. And listen to what I'm telling you. If you don't, you're going to go over the waterfall." At that point, he still has a choice. He can fight the sleep, which he senses is the right thing to do, the only necessary and the intelligent thing to do, and listen to that voice until his awareness of where he is and of what he's doing is so clear that it becomes stronger than his wish to sleep. That's one thing he can do. When he gets to the 51% mark, where he wants to listen to that voice and listen to what it's trying to tell him, when he gets to that point, I'll tell you what he's going to do. He's going to shake his head and he's going to grab that paddle and he's going to paddle for shore as fast as he can. And the other choice is to close his eyes, shut off the vision of that man, fall back into the boat so you can't hear the voice quite as clearly anymore, and fall back into a complete sleep, having surrendered your life to that state of falsehood. Well, what's going to happen to him? He has abandoned control of his life. Now, you're seated here in this room. As long as you're here listening to what I'm telling you, you still have a chance. You don't know you're asleep. You don't know what I'm talking about when I tell you every one of you seated here is in a state of psychic sleep. Do you recognize any of the dreams that I described, or did you have ones that I didn't have time to fill in? What are your particular dreams? One of them being that you are safe sleeping in that canoe? Don't you notice the shocks you get every day that is the beginning of the rapids? Don't you know that do you know that when you conceal hatred, that you're putting yourself into a deeper state of sleep? Don't you know when you just, what you call praying and hoping to yourself that something's going to turn up and change for you, don't you know that you're putting yourself into a deeper state of sleep? You had better listen to what you are being told tonight. And you'd better determine, as a couple of the men before said, you'd better determine that you're going to come back here to every meeting, because you in your present state are not capable of rescuing yourself from the canoe. I know that. And I know that if you don't come back, you're going to go into deeper sleep and you won't even know it. That man decides that he doesn't want to be rescued, that he wants to dream about being rescued. When he goes back to the bottom of that canoe, I will tell you, the time will come when he will no longer be able to hear the voice of that rescuer on the shore. He will no longer hear it because he has refused it. He doesn't want to hear it. He's decided what he wants to do with his life. What a tragedy. You have come here tonight, and perhaps for the first time you've heard higher truths. You've heard something, listen to this please. You've heard something that is authentically religious in the real meaning of that term. The real meaning of that term being that you can change the kind of a human being you are inwardly, and that new person that you are inwardly will react in a new way to everything outwardly, so that you're in command of your life at all times. So that all the costumes that you put on daily, all the false facial expressions, all the nervous little habits you have of trying to appear to be nice and friendly, aren't you glad when you can go home and take the mask off, take the uniform off, and be yourself? Oh, I see. When you do that, when you take the mask off, you become scared. Of course you do. Even when you take a mask off just for a little bit, you don't know who you are. And even the strange relief you feel of having taken the mask off doesn't last very long. Because you've had the habit of taking off a social mask out in public and putting on another one at home, which is your daydreams and your sleep. Do you know that it's a dream when you hate anyone? And you all hate. You hate yourself. I am telling you that that's a part of the dream state. Would you stand for anyone taking a whip and whipping you all day long? You wouldn't put up with that. Well, what kind of intelligence do you have, or rather not have, that you would let yourself, your old nature, whip yourself all day and all night as you presently do? It's not very smart. It doesn't have to be that way, and I'm telling you that, and you listen to what I'm telling you instead of your old masochistic nature, which just loves to be bullied, which loves to be threatened, which loves to be afraid, because when you're afraid, you can get an identity out of that. And then you can pray to your phony gods that you have built up out of your own imagination and say, God will save me. How come you've never been saved? To see through the horrible lie is a long, hard experience. You can do it. You can succeed in this class. If you don't want to be bitten by the lions anymore, then it doesn't make any sense to go out in this world and hang around the lions, because they have no choice but to bite you, as they've done in the past. If you want to be the conqueror of every lion, every phantom, every fantasy, you'll learn how to do it here. The choice is yours. You're in that canoe, and one hand is on the rim of it, and you're groggy, and you faintly hear the voice, and you fight a little bit, and then you go back to sleep a little bit, and you hear the voice, and then you say, I think it is better to give up, and your hand starts to slip off, and it falls down inside the canoe, and you go back. Only, now you listen, only by coming to every class that it is possible for you to attend. Only by doing that can you get sufficient jolts. Can you hear the voice so continuously so that the time comes that you can no longer ignore it. See, you want to, listen to what I'm telling you. You want to ignore it now because your sleep is that deep. If any of you in this room tells me, silently or out loud, don't let me go to sleep, I won't let you go to sleep. Do you want it? Yeah. If you want to go to sleep, I can shout at you 24 hours a day and you won't hear. But if you want strength so that your hand becomes stronger, you can pull yourself up a little straighter in that canoe so that your vision becomes clear and you can see the man yelling to you on the shore. Wake up, you're asleep. Wake up and paddle for shore. If you come here to every meeting, you have a chance. If you don't, you don't. It is as clear as that. And if you didn't hear me, you will go out of here never knowing what you missed. You will never know what the shore is like because you weren't there. You stayed in the canoe and dreamed you were on shore. If you will listen, if you will be receptive, you will hear the voice till the time comes when you can no longer ignore it, where the greatest joy and pleasure of your life will be to pick up the canoe and paddle as fast as you can to authentic safety. All right, we have time for questions and comments for a bit if you like. Raise your hand, please, and keep your questions short and to the point, and speak loud and clear. Stella.
Your frankness in telling us that we're asleep frequently comes to mind when I'm daydreaming. At those times, I get a perfect photograph of my dream state, and it's a great revelation to me.
Does it break the state a little bit temporarily?
Really?
That's the purpose of awareness, to break the dream state, the thought state. David, please.
When we feel hate, and we feel as though we want to think about it, even in the sense of trying to be aware, is the proper thing not to think about it and simply be aware of what you're doing?
Yes, simply see your state. If you think about it in the wrong way, you'll justify it or push it down or call it self-righteous indignation or something like that. Don't think about it. Simply see that it's there. If you start thinking about it, you'll justify it in one way or another. And that justification will keep you burning. How many of you are aware? Let's see your hands. Come on now. Are you aware that hatred is a fire? You want to continue to burn yourself for the rest of your life? Now, again, especially for those of you who are new, or those of you watching this film, you don't know that you have a false evaluation of anger and hatred. You don't know that you value it, and you value it because you take it as being a part of your real nature your permanent nature. And the very agitation of it is a part of the conspiracy and the delusion. Anger is very agitated, isn't it? You can shake a lot. And you take that shaking as being aliveness. And I will tell you, there's no aliveness in it at all, any more than a machine that shakes while producing shoes or wherever. There's no real life in that machine as it shakes and turns out shoes. There's only a mechanical force. There's no real life at all. And anger is a mechanical force that destroys the person who has it. Wrecks your health too, doesn't it? Go ahead, Pat.
What would be one indication that we had heard the man on the shore yelling at us?
What would be one indication? You gradually see yourself in this state of going back and forth. At first, you're not quite sure whether you hear the voice or not, so you just lay back in the canoe. And you think you hear something, and you look up to investigate a little bit. But for a long time, the first time you pull yourself up in the canoe, it's too much effort. You've never ever, that's such a terrific effort to pull yourself up in the canoe, because you're destroying your dream a little bit when you do that. And so you go back, you sink back. And that goes on thousands of times, just reaching up a little bit, very feebly, and you kind of get up and you barely peer over at first, and you go back. But because there is this desire to investigate, you become very much aware of how you put your hand up and you go up so far, and then your hands get weak and you flop down again. Now, this flopping down again and going back into the dream state is the same thing as having a fight with yourself. It's the same thing of being and having an antagonistic spirit. It's the same thing as being depressed. It's the same thing as being envious. That's this dream state, having all these negative features inside of you. But you're hearing this voice, and you're not sure what it's telling you, but at least it's different from the swirling of the water around you, and you can sense that it's different. And so you work your way up. And the sign that you're beginning to awaken is that you are aware that you fall asleep and then have a short period of consciousness. You can see the fluctuation back and forth. That's one sign. Oh, another sign is you're getting to be a little bit natural. You become much more simple in everything becomes simpler. The way you dress, the way you talk, everything, your whole lifestyle, to use that phrase, becomes simpler. And are you glad that you don't have to carry around on your back a change of costume? You know, about 15 costumes for each day, how you behave different toward the boss than toward the husband and toward the friend, toward the policeman who stops you, how you behave in different roles. You know, those costumes are heavy. We'll teach you how to take it off and drop it and get it behind you once and for all. Please.
Is waking up gradual or instantaneous?
No, it's gradual. We have to say that it does come over a period of time. And that is determined on how fast you will see that you are not your dreams about yourself. You are not your dreams about yourself. And even your negative dreams have value to you. When you're sad and suffering, you have given value to negative dreams, running a mental movie through your mind about a past experience where you were disgraced, or you were ashamed, or you did something that your parents called bad. And this keeps repeating through your mind all the time, a mental movie. And it causes you great pain, and you want that pain. You're going to have a lot of trouble understanding that you want that pain because it makes you, you think, exist now. But a memory of you is not you. You free yourself from the whole past and the future, because there will be no future for a man who's on top of the mountain. A man on top of the mountain doesn't say, tomorrow I'm going to climb to the top of the mountain. If you're there, time is canceled. Nothing to look forward to. Does that make you feel bad that you have nothing to look forward to? Well, you can look forward to things in a totally new way. You can just look forward to being yourself tomorrow. and the next day, and the next day. And that's all you need, is to be who you really are, not who you lie and tell yourself you are, or who society says you are. Never believe society when it tells you who you are, because it will lie to you. And it has lied to you, and look at the price we've all paid for listening to delusions. Now, if you really want to break that particular habit of going into fantasies before going to sleep, if you really want to break it, that is a superb beginning. And what will happen is that as your real wish, a right wish to drop it, gets stronger and stronger, you won't drop it, it will drop you. That is, it'll fall away from you. And you'll see yourself, and this is another evidence of growing pat, where you see yourself thinking less and less and less about the old things that you used to think about and worry about. You don't have any more worries because there's no self there at stake. No self to be threatened. You understand that the way you are now, you feel constantly threatened by people. You're threatened by the future of what's going to happen to you. Free mind has no fears of the future or the past. It's living now. I'll ask all of you, why do you have any goal at all? I am not saying that you shouldn't have the social goal, the human level goal of getting up and earning money tomorrow. You have to have money in order to pay your bills. I'm not saying you shouldn't have the goal to add another room to your house if you want, that's what you want to do. I'm not saying you shouldn't have the goal of moving somewhere else if it's the right, proper thing to do. Now you listen. Don't you ever forget what I'm going to tell you next. All goals and aims coming out of delusion, all aims and destinations which make you think that you will be happy and complete when you get them, are dragging you down, not forward. Now look, the gentleman said, come to 4 meetings. May I correct that? Come to 400 meetings. Every time you ask a question, I know that you're a little tiny child asking questions about the college course that you're getting, and you really think you can understand my answer. There's no way you can understand the answer, because you're making assumptions based on your own infantile aims. Now look, all of you here are terrified. You're scared, you are lost, you don't know what life is all about, you don't know what you are all about, and you come to a meeting like this, and you think you perfectly understand it. You didn't hear a word I said. I'm yelling at the top of my voice on that bank, wake up and see that you're dreaming, even in the questions you ask, and that it still doesn't get it, still doesn't do it. And I know that. I've been around a few years, and I understand how everybody asks the same questions, says the same things, goes into the same reactions, and most of them go out of this class knowing, quote mark, that they know more than the teacher. Now I'm going to tell you something. I don't very often use this phrase, but it's about time I did again. In a very special way, I feel sorry for those of you who don't come back to this class, because I know what your fate is going to be. It's going to be more of what your fate has already been, which is nervousness and hatred and hostility and fear. And don't you dare, any of you watching this film or seated in this room, don't you think that you can get away with lying to me, because you can't. Now see, I put you on the spot. Now I have forced you to make a decision as to whether you want to come back and listen to that voice so that your hand gets stronger and stronger, so that you can see the position you're in, or you make your choice to go back to sleep. If you don't come back to this class, you've made your choice to go back to sleep. Look, it is as simple as that. Now, some of you who don't come back, I'll tell you what to do, which you won't do. But it's my duty to tell you what to do, even though you don't do it. I want you to notice how you can't forget what you've heard here tonight. I want you to notice how it keeps nagging you and how you must keep criticizing what you've heard here tonight. How you must make what you've heard an enemy, an antagonist. Notice you can't forget what you've heard here tonight. Now I'm saying that to help you, because you sense that you've heard the pure truth here tonight, which you have. You sense that, but the sleepy part of you doesn't want to hear it and doesn't want to obey. But maybe 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years from now, you'll hear the little voice again, and you'll be tired of being asleep. You'll be tired of all these daydreams that never come true. And maybe you'll say, I sat in that room that night, and while the speaker was up there giving the talk, in my heart of hearts, I was rejecting everything he said. I knew more than he knew. I know what life is all about. And then maybe, with heaven's help, you'll say to yourself, I must have been the most stupid, arrogant, foolish human being on earth to have had those reactions in that room. All right. Time for the prodigal son to come home. Time for the prodigal daughter to come back to her father's house.
When I first came here, I had no idea of what you were talking about when you said that I was asleep. It was so foreign.
Yes.
And now, looking back, and even now, it's astounding how much of the time during the day is spent in a dream. It's just amazing.
If you want to know whether you're in a dream state or not, whether you're spiritually asleep, as I've described, I'll give you the simple rule to it, and then we'll go home. The rule is, whether you have anger in you or not, if you have anger in you, you are asleep. If you have neurotic suspicion in you, you are asleep. If you are afraid of anything or anyone, you are asleep. If you fear the future, if you have great resentment toward events and toward people who enter your life, if you feel either inferior or superior, if you don't know how to behave in any kind of a situation, in short, if you are suffering, if you're pressed down inwardly, then you are asleep. Now you know what sleep is if you have the honesty to admit it. Liars shall not enter the kingdom. If you want to cease to be a liar, you've got a good start tonight. The first thing you should know about responsibility is that you're incapable of having any. Responsibility develops with the knowledge of what it means to be responsible. A small child can begin to be told about responsibility and given practical exercises such as mowing a lawn in developing it. And he can begin to get the idea that the time will come in his or her life when he or she must properly be on his own. This is elementary responsibility, and every parent who really loves their child, who cares for their child, who understands a little bit himself about life, will most certainly give that child responsibilities so that the main lesson behind it will begin to develop early. The lesson that you are here on earth to live your life, not someone else's life, and not try to steal someone else's life, but to develop your very own existence here on earth. If a child can begin to get the lesson that's given to him, and which has so often failed to be given to him, a child can see that he must do certain things in order to gain other things. That idea will become properly fixed in his mind. As much as he rebels against it at the start, any little child, the first time a parent tells him, now you empty the trash, you take it from the kitchen out to the alley back there. The first several times, he's not able to understand it. Why? Because up to this point of his life, everything has been done for him. As he gets to be 5, he develops certain elementary responsibilities. Gets to be 10, he develops more. Now, a person who has developed this elementary responsibility is the only person who is qualified to shift from social responsibility to spiritual responsibility. You remember how often we've said here that only if your intellect, your mind, your ordinary intellect begins to work properly can you begin to rise above it. Because if you use it to the full extent that you can use it in running your business and taking care of your home, you will see that indeed there are limitations to it. And when you see the limitations of your mind, it makes you very curious and very eager to see if there's something higher than that elementary responsibility. Now, a person who has not developed certain preliminary training in doing certain things for himself, when he gets a little older, he will make a decision, and most people make the wrong decision. He will make a decision to either begin to go back and develop them from the start, or he will decide to go all the way in the other direction, which is abandonment of responsibility, abandonment of the opportunity that he has here to grow into something different. As a matter of fact, he will never know that he has missed the point of life because he didn't take the first elementary responsibilities that were given to him. Now, we've already talked about social responsibility, taking care of yourself, earning your own living, doing certain practical things with your life that everyone must do. You've seen that that is essential. But you must take your social responsibilities not because you're forced to do them, but because you see that they're a natural outcome of your present level, a present necessity of your present level. And that way you don't resent them, you just go ahead and do them because you know they're the right thing to do, and you understand that they are maybe the 3rd or 4th or 5th grade, which if you perform them properly, you can go on up to higher grades until the time comes, maybe, in some cases, where you've seen that you have done all you can for yourself, and you're still not happy. You're not fulfilled. You've been very responsible in taking care of your business, yes, of course, and you made a lot of money. And you can't figure out why all that nice home and that nice respectable family and all that hasn't given you any completion, no inner completion. You can't figure out why, if you have done your responsibilities up on the social level, if you've done that, how come you're not happy? A person reaching this stage where he has become mentally mature, up to a degree, mentally mature, runs into a very difficult situation which a careless person, a lazy person, never reaches. Because you've come up to the point where you've said, I've done everything I can do. Look, I've taken responsibility for myself. I've done everything I can do to be happy, and yet I know in my heart that it's been denied me. This is a wonderful experience for anyone who goes this far, because it's the beginning of the breaking down of self-delusions in which you say, I can make myself happy. That's a falsehood. But you'll never know it's a falsehood until you've gone beyond the preliminary responsibilities of taking care of yourself. When you get to a certain point then, you begin to question all of life. And a certain new, listen to this please, a certain new kind of bitterness enters into you. Some of you may recognize what I'm talking about in your own experiences. A new kind of feeling that you've been cheated. And isn't this strange now? Here you're successful, maybe you have a nice home, and you have all the things that society says you should have. You have all these things, and yet you still feel cheated, and it's a very confusing emotion, because you feel as if you've missed something, but what is it? You look around, what is it? I've got everything you said I should have, the money, the home, the car, and the power, and the influence. I've got all that, and yet there's something missing. What is it? That's the question, isn't it? Well, it's a long, long ways yet from where you first start to say, what is it that I'm missing, until you finally find it. Because when you ask the question, you will answer it, won't you? Who else is going to answer the question? If it isn't this wife, then it's another wife, right? If it isn't this husband, then it's that nicer looking man that I met the other day. If it isn't all this money, then it has to be travel. That's it. Money was made to spend, so I'll go traveling somewhere. What I've described to you, these external things, is a very, very small part of the person's world in which he's beginning to wonder why he isn't fulfilled. And he'll look inward to himself and ask himself all sorts of questions. He'll say, well, maybe it is indeed something inside me. I know what it is. I'm not spiritual enough. So he'll get what he calls a religious experience of some kind. Or he'll get whatever he calls kind of excitement that seems to satisfy him. The inner and the outer working together. Only the person who keeps the question alive will ever come to the final right conclusion of what his responsibility is in life. Now, keeping the question alive means to never settle for any kind of an answer you can get out of your own mind or the mind of any other human being. This means you're going to have to search not in just 1,000 places, because this is the characteristic of the mind, to search, but 10,000 places. And when you get to 10,000, you'll say it's the 10,001. And when you get to 50,000, you'll say it's 50,001. It's always the next, right? It's always the next thing that's going to fill up this void, this heartache, this sadness in the face and the sadness in the voice. If you keep the question alive, but what is it, long enough, and keep going long enough till everything is exhausted, you will then indeed come to the question, the right question. What is my true responsibility as a human being who's been put here on earth? The answer will become very clear to you. You've heard the question, and the answer becomes very clear after, just to pull a figure out of the air, after 100,000 goals, aims, whether you've succeeded or failed in them, so that you never again ask the question, what is the next thing, and will that do it? Because you know there is no answer. You knew it years ago. You knew it when you're furiously trying to make all that money and making all these human contacts and making all this effort to be liked by the people down at the office. You knew it way down deep inside that you weren't going to succeed the way you were going, but you still wouldn't stop and examine that feeling that says you're on the wrong track. And if anyone ever tried to tell you the truth, you would reach inside your own mind for infantile reactions to immature irresponsibilities. You would reach inside your own mind and come up with the usual answer to anything that tries to get anything through your head. And those reactions are as varied as the rocks out in the field there. One of the most terribly successful rejection of the truth that's trying to tell us we're on the wrong track and put us on the right track. One of the most commonplace rejections is ignoring. Is being very careful that you're in a position where you can ignore the gnawing, the haunting that's going inside of you, so that you can ignore it and do something exciting instead. This will make it necessary for you to have a stock of angry responses ready at any given moment. Because at any given moment, no matter where you go, there's always this sensing way deep down inside that you are being irresponsible, that you're not taking proper adult responsibility, spiritual responsibility for yourself. And your lives are then spent in finding ways to get out of doing what you know you must do. The power of this class is that we won't let you go down the path to your own destruction. We're calling out to you, just a minute. Slow down. Take a look. We're not trying to hurt you, which you think. We're trying to get you to take a look at yourself as you are in your irresponsibility, in your childishness, in your evasiveness, in your wish to turn aside and run off like a little child. Instead of slowing down long enough to say something terribly shocking to yourself. Let's see if you have ever said the following, or whether you're willing to say the following. I've been wrong all my life. Here I am, and state your age to yourself. Do you think, whatever your age may be, those of you in this class or those of you watching this film, are you able to look at your age, whatever it may be, and have the responsibility, the spiritual responsibility, because we're going above social success into authentic spiritual success. Are you able to slow down long enough and say to yourself, you don't have to say it to anyone else, keep it to yourself, I've been wrong about everything all my life. And the evidence is so clear right in front of me that I don't want to ignore it anymore. I've tried arrogance. I've tried refusal. I've tried weeping. I've tried running away. And whenever I run away, I go right in a circle and come back and find myself right where I started. But with not quite the same feeling of despair I had before, it is now increased. Because I am now beginning to recognize, although I don't want to recognize it, that no matter what I do, in my way, I always come back to the same scenes, the same kind of people, the same kind of experiences, the same inner trembling, the same dazedness, the same glee over having something to look forward to. I'll tell you, you take away the looking forward tos from people, and you would see their faces collapse right in front of you. What do you think that keeps their so-called happy faces looking happy and looking serene? The fact that when they come to a meeting like this, or they go to work, in their minds they're thinking of what they're going to be doing 3 hours, 10 hours, 2 weeks from now, and that's what keeps them going. And when we get up to that point, they get a certain thrill out of it for just a few minutes, and then they find themselves right back where they started. Now, spiritual maturity can solve all this running around in a circle.